They say no matter how high you rise, some doors remain closed. I was standing in front of one of them, Arlington Memorial Park, stretched ahead solemn and windswept under a leaden sky. A brass band murmured faintly in the distance. My dress uniform clung tight against my frame, the stars on my shoulder dull under the gray light. I stood still, watching the movement beyond the ceremonial gates. Family gathered. Officers in white gloves, a folded flag already prepared, and not a single soul waiting for me. My name was not on the invitation list. That was deliberate. The man they were honoring was my father, Colonel Thomas Carter, a man whose blood ran through my veins but whose legacy had been rewritten by those who survived him. I stepped forward. The crunch of my boots on gravel seemed too loud, but I kept walking, until a voice cut through the wind. "You should not be here." I looked up. Vivian Carter, my father's second wife. Black veil, black gloves, pearls clenched in one fist like she was about to pray. She was not. Behind her stood Ryan, my half-brother, clean-shaven, sharp-suit expression smug. "You were not invited," he added like a formality, like he was the one granting or revoking access to grief. I did not answer. I looked past them to the rows of chairs, to the podium, to the ceremonial urn already placed beneath the flag. I adjusted the cap on my head and walked forward. Behind me, their protests continued in murmurs. I heard Ryan whisper disgrace under his breath. I had worn this uniform in war. I had stood in combat zones under threat of mortar fire. But nothing had felt as hostile as that courtyard. Then it happened. From the far side of the crowd, a figure moved. A man stepped forward in full service dress, silver-haired posture, ironed straight. General Caldwell. I knew his face from headlines and history books. We had never met, until now. He squared his shoulders, raised his chin, and then, with a voice that carried like thunder through the cold morning, he called out, "Attention! Major General Carter on site." The shift was instant. Uniformed men and women froze, heels clicking. Civilian guests rose in confusion, unsure whether to follow, but too intimidated not to. Even the chaplain hesitated. Vivian's hand dropped. Her clutch slipped from her grip and fell to the pavement. Ryan looked like he had swallowed a brick. I walked, slowly, deliberately, each step cutting through decades of exclusion. The aisle was reserved for dignitaries and family. No one dared block my way now. I passed the urn, my father's name etched into the brass. My jaw clenched. My chest refused to soften. Not here. Not in front of them. I reached the front pew. Empty. I sat, alone. The ceremony began. Eulogies echoed off the stone. They spoke of service, of patriotism, of honor. But I heard none of it, because every word sounded like it came from strangers. They spoke of a man I recognized but did not fully know, or maybe a version of him that never really lived. The man I knew had secrets and silence, and I was here to find out why. After the service, people filtered out. Some offered tight nods, others avoided my eyes. Vivian did not speak. Ryan gave me a mocking smile. "You made your little scene." Happy now, I said nothing. My hand was in my coat pocket, fingers curled around something cold, given to me moments earlier by a man who appeared, then disappeared into the departing crowd. An envelope, thick, sealed in red wax, marked only with two initials. T. C. My father's. I opened it once the courtyard had cleared. Inside was a military keycard and a short note. 5 words. Operation Nightlock. Ask Michael. I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned toward the exit. They had buried my father, but I was not done with him. Not yet. He had left a trail, and I was going to follow it. The road stretched ahead like a question no one wanted to ask. Northern California was colder than I remembered even in spring. Pines lined both sides of the winding trail, and the only sound came from the tires humming against the asphalt. In my breast pocket, the military keycard felt heavier than anything I had earned in 20 years of service. I had driven 6 hours without stopping. No music, no calls, only silence and that 5-word message echoing in my mind. Operation Nightlock. Ask Michael. I had not seen Michael Cole in nearly a decade. The last time was on an encrypted call after a failed Black Ops deployment in Syria. After that, he vanished. Or maybe he had simply chosen to disappear the way people do when they have seen too much and said too little. My father once told me Michael was the best encryption analyst the Department of Defense had ever produced. Then he got too curious and too honest. That combination never ends well. I pulled off the road at a clearing barely marked. No signs, just a faint indentation in the dirt, a break in the trees. A cabin came into view, wooden, single story, moss-covered roof, a rusted satellite dish leaning off one edge like a dead limb. I killed the engine, sat for a full minute, then stepped out, hands visible. No sudden moves. I walked up the porch stairs, each one groaning under my boots. I raised a hand to knock, but the door opened before I could. He stood there, taller than I remembered, face hollowed by time, eyes sharp and wary. He did not speak at first, just scanned me like a threat assessment. Then, finally, Claire Carter, he said. "General now," I replied. He nodded once, barely perceptible. "You should not be here. Neither should you," I answered. Then I pulled the folded note from my coat and handed it to him. "My father left this." He took it. His fingers trembled slightly over the handwriting. A twitch. A memory breaking through. He stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the air smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Maps covered the walls. A laptop glowed on a desk cluttered with drives tools and a small generator. He moved like someone who had not trusted a chair in years. Never fully sitting, always bracing. He looked at the card I handed him. "Nightlock," he muttered. I was afraid he kept this. I stared at him. "What is it?" He inserted the keycard into a reader, typed a command I could not follow. The screen blinked. Access granted, but what appeared was fractured. Shredded files, corrupted code. Michael's fingers moved like a surgeon's. He pulled fragments from digital decay. "Some of this is salvageable," he said. But not much. I leaned closer. Dates, memo headers, encrypted tags. Then a file name flickered. Nightlock Sigma 01. He clicked. A list of transactions. Half of them redacted. But one line item came through Secure Assets Transfer. Authorization v. Carter. I froze. Vivian. That was my stepmother. Why would she be authorizing military asset transfers? Another line appeared. Bank routing records traced to a shell company. Ryan Carter listed as recipient of consulting fees. I clenched my fists. He did not just take my father's legacy. He used it. Michael clicked again. This time an audio file opened. The voice was degraded, but unmistakable. Brockwell, my father's superior, former general. If he talks, make sure it is the last thing he ever says. I blinked hard. My father had not died from illness. He had died from silence. The kind that covers up operations people were willing to kill for. Michael sat back, his face pale. "You were not supposed to find this." "And yet, I did," I whispered. "He left it for me. And now I need to know everything." Michael stared at the screen, then at me. Nightlock was a covert distribution channel. Military assets disguised as tech development programs. It started as intelligence gathering. It became something else, something off-book. "You mean black market weapons transfers," I said. He nodded slowly. "If your father found out, and I think he did, then they erased him before he could expose it." I stepped away from the screen. My mind raced. Vivian and Ryan were not just erasing a man. They were profiting off his disappearance. That envelope, that funeral, none of it was grief. It was cover. I turned to Michael. "Can you recover enough to prove it?" "Maybe," he said. "But if we do, they will come after you too." "I already lost him," I whispered. "I am not losing the truth." I stood at the window staring out at the thick forest. Somewhere out there, people were counting on my silence, but I had not come this far to stay quiet. I came to finish what he started. The storm did not come from the sky. It came from the hard drives humming under Michael's desk. For the next 12 hours, we did not speak much. He worked like a man possessed, parsing corrupted sectors, cross-referencing packet logs, decrypting fragments of audio that sounded like whispers from the grave. I scanned every line of metadata he salvaged, searching for patterns. And then there it was. A second reference to Nightlock this time, tied to a series of offshore transactions flagged under Homeland Oversight Level 2. No names, but a familiar routing code. I leaned in. This routing number matches the Carter family trust account. Michael confirmed it with a silent nod. I opened another file. A memo tagged with an internal note. Asset reallocation approved. Authorization VC. I stared at the initials. Vivian Carter. I had grown up thinking she was just the perfect, polished stepmother, someone who always looked like she stepped out of a fundraiser brochure. But this was a weaponized woman, and she had used my father's death as a firewall for her empire. Then came the twist I did not see coming. A secondary folder buried deep in the data structure titled Monarch Record. Michael cracked the layer. It was a list, individuals, military officials, senators, contractors, but only one name stood out bold, uncensored. Ryan Carter. I exhaled through my teeth. Ryan had always been my father's project, his son, his legacy. But this proved he was his destroyer. There were timestamps, payments disguised as consulting fees, video stills of private meetings. One of them showed Ryan shaking hands with General Brockwell himself, the same man whose voice we had just recovered, saying my father should be silenced. I turned to Michael. We need to go public. Michael hesitated. Not yet. If we leak this raw, they will bury it faster than we can prove it. I nodded slowly. Then we do it smart, strategic, controlled. Michael transferred the files to a clean drive. Meanwhile, I reached out to a former mentor. General Jacqueline Green, retired, respected, untouchable. We met at a park near the Potomac. She wore civilian clothes but moved like she still carried rank in her spine. After I showed her the evidence, she stayed silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "They killed Thomas, didn't they?" "Yes. And they used his own family to do it." Her expression darkened. "Then you're not going to win this in a boardroom. You'll need a stage." I knew exactly which one. The Valor Defense Gala, an annual fundraising banquet where the military elite gathered to pat themselves on the back. Vivian was a co-host. Ryan was scheduled to give a speech honoring my father's legacy. The irony was unbearable, but it was also perfect. Michael and I spent the next 48 hours preparing the drop. Every file was duplicated 3 times, each copy hidden in separate cloud vaults with military-grade encryption. One would go to the press, one to the Inspector General, and one to the stage. Noah arrived on the 3rd day. He was a digital ghost, a hacker I once pulled out of a field op in Turkey after he cracked a Russian drone frequency. He owed me. He said, "This is bigger than anything I've seen. It's not just corruption, it's treason." I nodded. Which is why we cannot afford a single mistake. Noah helped verify the audio fingerprint of Brockwell. It was a match, no room for deniability. Every click was now a step closer to exposure, but also to danger. On the 5th night, someone broke into Michael's cabin. They did not take anything. They just rearranged the drawers. A message. "We see you." Noah moved all our files to an offline relay. I booked a room under a false name at a federal safe apartment in D.C. I left the drive on the table, a single post-it on top, to be played at the Valor Gala. That night I did not sleep. I sat on the floor staring at the urn I had taken from the funeral. They had tried to bury him twice, first his body, then his name, but I had the match to burn the lie. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city lights. I whispered to no one. Tomorrow they will hear him speak. The morning of the gala, the city was already vibrating with tension. The Department of Defense press office had released a glowing article titled, "Legacy of Colonel Carter, a Patriot Remembered." Ryan's face was featured beside the urn I had stood near, as if he had mourned a man he helped erase. Vivian had given a radio interview, her voice syrupy and composed, saying, "My father had always taught his children dignity." I wanted to break something. Instead, I sat at the safe house kitchen table, watching Noah decrypt the last audio segment. Michael paced in the background. Then it happened. The audio sharpened. General Brockwell's voice crisp now. Ensure Carter does not testify. Push his discharge. Seal the files. I don't care how you do it. I froze. The cold precision of it made my skin crawl. This wasn't incompetence. It was orchestration. We clipped that section just 20 seconds long, no names, just voice and threat. It would be enough. Noah posted it anonymously to a secure whistleblower channel with military forums. No tags, no commentary. Let the voice speak for itself. Within 2 hours, it began to spread. Encrypted forums picked it up. Some veterans recognized the cadence. Some even commented, "I know that tone." That's a senior. By nightfall, military blogs started whispering. Then, a journalist from a defense analysis group called me directly. Anonymous source. The voice print she said is credible. Are you prepared to go public? I paused. Not yet. Wait until tomorrow. She agreed. Noah's servers were pulsing with traffic. Dozens of digital fingerprints. Some civilian, some military, some that looked government grade. We had their attention, but attention wasn't enough. Not yet. That night, my Pentagon email pinged. It was from an official gala coordinator. The message was sharp protocol-laced with one line that froze me. Your attendance has been confirmed by the office of General Brockwell. Table 4. That was not an invitation. It was a dare. I showed it to Noah. He whistled softly. They want you there to control you, or to discredit you, I said, which is why we're going to make sure I control the stage. The next day, I stood in front of the mirror in my full formal dress uniform. Silver braid, medals, insignia. Each piece a contradiction. I didn't feel like a general. I felt like a weapon being polished for impact. Michael handed me the primary drive. Backup's already with Green, he said. If something happens, she drops it. I nodded. Noah checked the microphone hidden in the clutch I would carry. Clean audio feed. Live to 2 external relays. They won't be able to bury this. I entered the gala 10 minutes before the first toast. The chandeliers above sparkled like teeth. The room reeked of power dressed in silk. Eyes followed me. Some recognized me. Others simply stared unsure how to place a woman in uniform walking like she owned the ground beneath her. Ryan stood at the podium raising a glass. My father was a man of integrity, he said. He believed in order and discretion and legacy. I bit my tongue. Vivian was seated beside a defense undersecretary, smiling like she was untouchable. I moved toward the stage. Green met my eyes from across the room. A nod. Now. I stepped onto the velvet platform before they could stop me. Ryan turned. His face drained of color. I took the mic. Good evening. I am Major General Eliza Carter, daughter of Colonel Thomas Carter. You may have heard stories about him, but you have not heard the truth. Behind me, a screen flickered on. The room fell still. A voice rang out. If Carter opens his mouth, end it. Permanently. Brockwell's voice. Clear. Unmistakable. I let it play for 22 seconds, just long enough to make everyone freeze. I clicked the remote again. Images appeared. Financial ledgers. Vivian's signature. Ryan's name attached to security consulting payouts. A redacted memo. Nightlock asset transfer. The silence broke into 1,000 gasps. One woman dropped her wine glass. I spoke clearly. My father discovered an illegal asset routing operation under military cover. He attempted to report it. He was silenced. I have the evidence. It has been submitted to the Inspector General. It has also been backed up to multiple secure locations. Vivian stood. That's a lie, she hissed. Ryan shouted. You're sick. You need help. Then the twist. General Green stepped forward. She wasn't just attending. She had come in full retired uniform, ribbons gleaming. She nodded toward the entrance. 4 military police entered, quiet, precise. They walked straight to Brockwell, who had been standing stiffly near the bar. He did not resist. He simply adjusted his cufflinks and followed them out. That's when the press took the first photo. By morning, it would be on every major network. I stepped down from the stage. No applause, just breathless disbelief. They had tried to erase my father. They had failed, and now the reckoning had begun. By dawn, the Capitol was burning, but with headlines instead of fire. Defense blogs, national networks, even morning radio shows were dissecting every second of the clip. Brockwell's voice was undeniable. His office released a statement calling the audio fabricated and manipulated, but within hours, a second voice print expert confirmed its authenticity. The military issued a press release General Brockwell placed under administrative investigation pending review, but I knew what it really meant. They were scrambling. Inside my Pentagon-issued apartment, I sat in silence while Noah rerouted all our servers to off-grid backups. Green had flown back to North Carolina, but not before slipping me a secure file evidence of past complaints that had been ignored or sealed. My father's name was among them. I read it once, then filed it away. I had work to do. 48 hours later, I received a summons. Tribunal hearing. Official. Uniform required. No legal counsel allowed in the room. It was designed to isolate. But I was done being alone. I walked into the tribunal chamber in full uniform, my hair tied back, my posture sharp. 3 senior officers sat at the head of the room, expressions carved from stone. General Carter, one of them, began. "You are here regarding allegations of data tampering, unauthorized possession of restricted material, and public endangerment of classified operations." I met their gaze. I was here because I exposed a crime. Silence. Then the questions began. Where did you acquire the audio? Who helped you decrypt it? Why did you release it without internal review? I answered every question with clarity. They tried to trip me, but I had anticipated every angle. Finally, one officer leaned forward. "Do you believe your actions were in service of national security or personal vendetta?" I answered with no hesitation. I believe that service means protecting the truth even when it is inconvenient to the powerful. They dismissed me, said they would deliberate. I knew what that meant. Delay, distract, discourage. But the damage was already spreading. The Carter Family Foundation, which Vivian chaired and Ryan managed, was placed under federal review. IRS audits, defense contractor scrutiny, anonymous financial records surfaced online linking donation funnels to shell companies abroad. I watched it unfold from a distance. I had no satisfaction, just cold focus. Then came the collapse. A court order froze all assets of the foundation. Vivian's passport was flagged. Ryan was photographed leaving a federal building with a lawyer and no comment. I released nothing more. I did not need to. Truth does not always need a hammer. Sometimes it only needs light. Then came the final blow. A sealed envelope arrived at my apartment. Official seal. Inside, a signed letter from the Department of Defense. Effective immediately. Major General Eliza Carter is appointed sole trustee of the Carter Family Foundation by unanimous vote due to her demonstrated commitment to ethical leadership and legacy preservation. I read it twice. My hands did not shake. I placed the letter on the table and stared at the urn beside it. I whispered, "They tried to bury you under lies, but I dug you out with truth." That evening, I attended the first board meeting of the restructured foundation. The room was small cold, filled with unfamiliar faces, auditors, investigators, neutral parties. Vivian was not present. Ryan joined via a grainy video feed. He looked thinner, paler. The chairperson began. "Let's start with item 1. Allegations of fraud." Ryan tried to speak. "This is a vendetta," he said. "She's using grief like a weapon." The lead auditor cut him off. "We are not here for family matters. We are here for financial crimes. Sit down." Ryan did, and said nothing for the rest of the meeting. The board voted to remove him permanently. I did not gloat. I did not smile. I signed the order quietly and left the room. Outside, the wind caught my coat. I stood alone on the marble steps watching the world spin forward. The house I had once been locked out of was now under government seal. The security gate that had once rejected me now sat rusted and idle. I visited it only once. Not to enter, just to stand at the edge of the driveway where my father once taught me to ride a bike. It had felt like flying back then. Now it felt like closing a loop. A week later, I received an email from the Naval Academy, a formal request. Would Major General Carter speak at the upcoming Legacy and Ethics Symposium suggested topic, Command Conscience and Consequences? I read it 3 times. I accepted. On the day of the symposium, the hall was packed with cadets, officers, civilians, professors. I stepped onto the stage not with pride, but with purpose. I spoke without slides, without visual aids, only words. I said ethics does not begin in policy. It begins when you are alone in a room and you are afraid. When you choose to speak anyway. I did not mention my father's name until the final sentence. I said I am Eliza Carter. My father died not because he was weak, but because he was strong enough to know when to stand alone. And I was proud to finish the fight he could not. Then I stepped back. The applause did not come immediately. It came slowly. Then, all at once. I did not need it. I had already won. Outside, a reporter asked if I planned to pursue further legal action against those involved. I smiled faintly. Truth is not revenge, it's just gravity, and it always pulls things back down. That night, I sat with Noah and Michael in silence. No toasts, no celebration. Just the quiet hum of a city learning how to breathe differently. I looked at the folder marked Nightlock and placed it into the fire. The flames caught quickly. And then, it was gone. My father's legacy no longer needed protection. It had become armor. And now, it was mine. It was not over just because the system had shifted. Some truths do not settle quietly. They leave echoes. 3 weeks after the symposium, I received another envelope, this one hand-delivered with no return address. Inside was a flash drive. No label, no encryption. Just one folder named Redline. I loaded it on a secure device heart already racing. It contained surveillance footage time-stamped 2 months before my father's death. The footage showed General Brockwell in a private room with 2 civilians. One was Ryan, the other a man I recognized from military procurement reports. A weapons contractor. They were reviewing falsified asset lists. I watched the video twice. Then I locked it away. Not for revenge. For insurance. A few days later, a journalist I trusted published a clean summary of the Nightlock findings. Names were withheld. Focus was placed on the failure of oversight, the danger of legacy corruption, and the quiet rise of accountability. My name was not the headline. My father's was. As it should be. Vivian resurfaced in a short segment on a late-night news show. She wore beige and tried to cry, said the military had turned her husband's memory into a scandal. The host didn't push, but the internet did. Public forums lit up with side-by-side comparisons of donation trails, board decisions, and signature analysis. She vanished again within 48 hours. Ryan was seen leaving a courtroom 6 weeks later. His plea was sealed. I did not need to read it to know what it meant. Immunity in exchange for silence. Let him keep his silence. I had the truth. Then came a morning when I found myself standing at Arlington again. Not for a ceremony, just to sit. The bench near my father's urn had been replaced. A new plaque rested beneath it. For those who spoke when silence was safer. My mother appeared beside me wrapped in a wool coat. She said nothing for a while. Then she handed me a small frame. It held an old photograph. My father. Me. Her. Before everything fractured. He used to say you were his sharpest compass, she whispered. You didn't always see it, but he followed you. I did not answer, just stared at the photo until the silence felt full enough to breathe in. Later that night, I returned to the Foundation's office. It was cleaner now, honest. The nameplate on the door read, Major General Eliza Carter. Inside the walls were lined not with awards, but with case files, scholarship recipients, veteran support programs, ethics initiatives. I had stripped away the illusion. What remained was real. A junior officer stopped by to deliver mail. Before she left, she turned and asked, Ma'am, do you really think justice is possible in a place like this? I looked at her. Justice is not a wave. It is a tide. It takes time. It pulls everything eventually. That weekend, I received one final message. From the Senate Oversight Committee. They had voted to open a formal inquiry into defense procurement channels linked to the Nightlock project. It would be a slow process, but it would be on record. I replied with one sentence. I will testify. The day before I was scheduled to speak, I visited my father's urn one last time, not for closure, for continuity. I placed the commendation medal awarded posthumously beside it. The ribbon curled slightly in the wind. I whispered, "They can't erase you anymore." Then I walked away. That night, as rain lashed against my windows, I reviewed my statement line by line. Facts, dates, confirmations. Then I added one sentence at the end. My name is Eliza Carter. I do not speak on behalf of the military. I speak as a daughter who stood when others fled. The hearing was public, broadcast on C-SPAN. I wore my uniform, but I did not wear fear. Every camera flashed, every light burned, but I was steady. I read the statement, then I looked up. The senators stared back. Some nodded, some squirmed. None interrupted. Afterward, reporters swarmed. I gave no interviews. Just one quote. This was never about vengeance. It was about refusing to be silent. Days passed, then weeks. The world kept moving, but something had shifted. I saw it in the new cadets lining up at the academy in the updated ethics curriculum handed out that fall. They had added a new case study, Nightlock. Not with my name, but with the lesson. One evening, a young man stopped me outside a coffee shop, nervous, carrying a book. He said, "General Carter, you spoke at my graduation. You said leadership begins in darkness. It stayed with me." I thanked him, signed his book, watched him walk away into a world I hoped would demand better of him than it did of us. Back home, I opened the last drawer in my desk. Inside was a copy of the letter my father had written before he died. It had never been sent. Michael had found it in the metadata of a backup drive. One line stood out. I raised her to lead with silence, but I forgot to teach her when to speak. "You taught me," I whispered. Eventually. I closed the drawer. The world outside was quieter now. Not fixed, not healed, but clearer. They had called me a disgrace at his memorial. They tried to shut me out, but a general had stood and said, "We answer to her now." And that was how it began. Not with rage, not with rank, but with the truth spoken loud enough to echo across everything built on lies. I had not been invited into the family. I had rewritten what family meant, and this time it would stand.